Hey guys, hope everyone is doing well today. So for today's video, I want to share with you guys some of my very favorite cards in the whole hobby. So this is going to be the 1997 Carddass, Bandai Carddass Pocket Monster set. And some combination of all of those words. Generally, you're going to hear it as sort of the 1997 Carddass set. There's also a 1996 Bandai Carddass set, but today we're just going to go over this 1997 one. And in my opinion, of all of the sort of early, the pre-TCG, pre-trading card game, full art cards depicting our favorite Pokemon, this to me is very clearly the best set in terms of art, in terms of quality of art. And interesting art. In the Topsoon set, for those who know these sets, and the 1996 Bandai Carddass set and some of the other sets, I don't think the art is nearly as interesting as these cards, and it's more kind of in those cards it's very like stock kind of Pokemon. Each of our Pokemon in sort of a very stock kind of neutral pose. In these cards, as you'll see, there's a lot of like humor in these cards, there's a lot of interesting attack art in these cards, and there's a lot of different things that you will not see in any other Pokemon cards that exist in this Ken Sugimori art set. All right, so sort of jumping into this first card here that we can see together. This is one of the checklist cards. There are two checklist cards, and I'm going to show you both of them. I do not have either of them in PSA graded condition. Both of these cards are actually in pretty good condition that I have here. They're probably 7s or 8s. Both of them I keep in my binder collection. I have a full binder of these in all of the early Japanese sets because I really love these cards and I love flipping through these binders and looking at all the arts together. And so I haven't graded these cards because I want a complete set in my binder, and also I usually don't grade 7s and 8s. It's very rare that I do. Although now, because these cards are continuing to go up in value, I am becoming more and more tempted to start pulling out some of the nicer ones and grading them. And then replacing them with sort of lower condition ones that I can keep in my binder. So we'll see how that process goes over time. But for now, these are still my two binder cards. So as you can see here, amazing art in this first one. The starters, Pikachu, and our favorite hero there in the middle. So the next card I'm going to show you is the other checklist card with our fully evolved starters in it. Also really amazing art. Both of these cards are really cool. Obviously this one has the Charizard. Charizard collectors may want this to keep in their collection, which is part of why the value on this card I think is also so high. Of these two, this art to me is just can't be beat. This card can't be beat. I'm not sure there are any cards that can beat this card in terms of just the pure art and the coolness and the age of this card. Just spectacular. But this card too, great, beautiful card. All right, so those are the two checklist cards. And as we go through this video, just like usual I've been doing, and I think you guys have been liking that, I'm going to put pop reports, PSA 10 pop reports, and the rough sort of price estimate on these cards. And we're going to talk about how all these cards have really gone, like everything else, all these cards have really gone up in value recently. And in fact, a lot of these cards are actually doing better, than many WotC cards in terms of appreciation. And doing better than certainly most modern cards right now in terms of percentage appreciation, which is interesting. When I was buying these cards, first of all, I'm going to show you guys, by the way, I'm going to show you guys all of the prism cards, so all of the hollow or prism cards that are in the set, because there are too many cards to show you every card in the set. There's one card for every Pokemon in the 151. Including Mew, which is nice that they included Mew in this set. So I'm just going to show you the prism cards to kind of keep it short, and then I'm going to show you a couple of other cards just because they're sort of interesting, just to illustrate the types of cards and the type of card art you can expect to see in these cards. So going back to price and investability and collectibility of these cards for a second, in my mind, I was buying as many of these cards as I possibly could. And I have just like a lot of the cards that we're going to talk about here. I think of this Venusaur card, for example. I don't have a PSA 10. I've never been able to come across one that I thought was at a reasonable price. But I think I have, 7 or 8 or 9 probably of this PSA 9. I probably own, of this set, I probably own the most of these cards probably in the world. Pretty high percentage of these cards, and have quite a few of them in 10. Although, if you check the pop reports, very few exist in 10. These are very difficult cards to grade. Quite difficult cards to grade. One, they're very old, but two, they're very fragile, and they can also easily scratch. And you also have centering issues on all of these cards. But so when I was buying these cards, I wasn't buying these cards necessarily because I thought they would go up, although I definitely did think they would go up in value. I view this era as extremely underrated in terms of collectability and value, because I think people just don't know about it, and I think people are yet to appreciate that these cards actually came before any American cards that we saw, and were sort of the first and coolest art cards of the Pokemon that we love. And I think as people, hardcore Pokemon, collectors kind of work their way through Wizards of the Coast and look for more challenges and more interesting art and different types of things, they're going to come across these cards and really want these cards as well in their collection, and want many of these cards. And getting these cards in really good condition and really high condition is pretty tough. I think as these cards become more and more popular, the pop reports are definitely going to increase, because there are certainly Japanese sellers who have a decent amount of these cards. I would assume. But how many of them are actually going to be in mint or gem mint condition? I'm not sure, and I doubt they're going to be enough to meet the demand. But we'll have to watch those pop reports together. But as you'll see in this video, the prices on some of these cards is starting to get quite high, particularly on the Charizard, and these two cards. The value has always been quite high and continues to be quite valuable. So like I've said in the last video, as a collector, what I'm trying to do is I want as many of the cards that I really enjoy at low prices, and then I want my collection value. Of course, I want my collection value to go up over time and enjoy having a valuable collection. And so what I look for is value. I look for things that I think are underappreciated, that have gorgeous art, that are rare, that are scarce, and that are hard to grade. And I look for those cards, and I say to myself, okay, these cards, for example, completely met that with me. These are historic, first period, Pokemon cards ever in the world, right? In Japanese, and their full art, gorgeous art glory. And my thinking was, there's so few of these cards, and the only reason people aren't buying these or paying for these is because people, I think people in this hobby have a hard time sort of trusting themselves and listening to their own feelings, and they kind of go with the herd. And so when someone tells you, like, these are too niche, or people aren't going to like these because they're not Wizards of the Coast, or, people didn't open these packs in America, and so they're not going to like them, those are decent arguments, but I can tell you that's not the way I actually feel. And so at the end of the day, I suggest you trust your own collector's instincts, and it's part of why collectors, I think, make the most money in the end, because investors often, I think, follow the hype and what other people, and what they have to follow sort of collectors telling them that we really like this, and so this is going to go up in value a lot. These cards, it was like no one was saying that, or very few people were saying that, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are amazing. Either these are going to be insanely valuable one day, if there aren't too many of them and the pop report doesn't get too flooded, in my opinion, because they're the originals, or I'm going to have a ton of cards at very reasonable prices that I love, right? So win-win scenario. And honestly, no matter how high the prices on these cards go, I'm not sure that I have any interest in selling them. Unless I, needed the money, for some other great opportunity. Every time I sell a card, I have no interest, just full transparency. I don't take that money and put it in other areas of my life. I'm not looking to get rich or get wealthy from Pokemon in any way. I'm not using it in any way for my livelihood. My goal is to create the most valuable collection I possibly can, and the collection that I want the most and feel the best about. And I want to create something special that I really enjoy, and that really has that rarity, scarcity, but also beautiful art and historic cards that I really connect with. And so when I sell cards or buy cards at what I think are low prices and then decide to sell them, which isn't that, I don't do that often, I take that money and I reinvest it back into other cards that I think are right now undervalued or underappreciated. And then later, if I'm right, and this has happened a number of times because I've been right in certain scenarios, then I take the money from the cards that I sold. Sorry, first I take that money and I put it in other cards that I think are undervalued, and then later on, when everything kind of equals out, then I rebuy at roughly the same price often, or a slightly higher price, the card that I sold originally, but I've still spent less money than if I had bought all of the cards, at the original time, if that makes sense. Because what you're doing here is you're selling undervalued cards that you think are overvalued at the moment, buying undervalued cards, and then when all the cards kind of equal the same value, then you rebuy that original card. And what you've done now is you have, for example, I'll just give a quick example of what that might look like. Let's say that I have 2 of these Venusaur cards, okay? Actually, let's say I just have 1 of these Venusaur cards. And let's say that I think that card is is overvalued compared to, another card. Next card we're going to look at, this Charizard card. Okay, let's say that I think the Charizard card I think this card is overvalued compared to this card. Okay, so I could sell this card theoretically, right, and then buy 2 of these cards because I think these cards should be the same value as this card. Okay, and so once if I'm right, now I own, instead of owning 1 of these cards, I own 2 of these cards. Then later on, when this becomes probably about equal to the price of this, which is my theory, and I've been lucky, partially lucky, but also, as I said, very engaged in the hobby and kind of know what, I think I have a good idea of what collectors value, because I'm a collector too and a lover of these cards. Then I can rebuy this for the same price that it always was, or slightly over. But now I have 3, of these cards that are of equal value instead of just theoretically 2. Does that make sense? So enough of a ramble on that. Let's look at some more of these cards. So here's the first Venusaur Prism card. The next is the card I showed before, the Charizard card. And you're going to see the prices of these cards. So a lot of these cards I bought for really good deals, because these are still very niche, but they're becoming less niche. They're becoming more popular. And these cards, I was really the only one, or one of the only few people buying them when they were coming out. I've noticed other people starting to show these cards a lot more. People, big channels and fantastic people like Scott Pratt. I was buying these well before Scott started showing them in his videos, and I think that him showing them and talking about those cards more definitely did create more of a buzz around them, and he gave them really the attention they deserved. And I noticed that prices started going up after that. But a lot of these cards I got for 1/5, 1/6, even to 1/10 of what they're going now. Just over the last couple of years. Probably started buying these about maybe 2 years ago. Some of these I got in the last year for sure. I don't remember which ones. Here's the Clefairy. Scyther. Everyone, cool unique art, cool unique pose. Eevee. Haven't gotten this one into PSA 10 yet for a price that I like. A number of these actually I have multiple copies in PSA 9, but haven't gotten those PSA 10s. Again, they're very hard to find, and often people charge a lot for them. Particularly now, the prices have really gone up. So a lot of these 9s, I was buying for $15 each, $10 to $15 each. The 10s I was buying for $50, $60, most of them. I think the Charizard I probably got for $250 maybe, somewhere in there. Blastoise I got for maybe around $100, $125. And as you'll see by the prices, they've all gone up a lot. To me, like, you know, again, buying this card, you know, for $15 is just such a no-lose situation. I've only spent $15. The grading is $12. You know, $3 for a card that's from 1997 and is just unbelievable, incredible art just seems like such great value to me that even if other people never agreed with me, I'd be so happy to have them for those prices. You know, just one, in my opinion, stunner after another. You know, so many of these cards I could look at for so long. Showcase each of them, each of the prisms. Definitely one of my favorites here, and Dragonite is one of my very favorite Pokemon, so I tried to get as many of these in 10 as I could because I love collecting Dragonite. Mewtwo in 9. So I've actually graded, you know, and I've graded some of these myself, and have graded quite a few of these Mewtwo, and they always come back 9, even though I cannot see any imperfections on them. It's very frustrating. They don't want to give me my Mewtwo 10. And this is the only Mew, other than an ungraded Mew, which is probably also about near mint, that I have. Have a hard time finding Mew, and haven't seen too many PSA 9s, and certainly not PSA 10s. One came up not too long ago that I probably should have pulled the trigger on in an auction, but it went a little bit high for what I wanted to pay. I really, I'm very, because I like so much in Pokemon, and I don't feel a intense need to own every single card right this second, and I believe that, you know, these cards will come back around, and also can retrace in value. I really try not to do that fear of missing out thing. I don't feel that intense compulsion to buy something, and I always set prices, and I never go over them in auctions. So oftentimes I, you know, lose out on cards that I really want, but, you know, for me that strategy has really worked in the long run because I've paid, you know, close to bottom, you know, or the lowest price, you know, recorded for almost all of these cards. And, you know, over the past 2 years, I've really been getting like the lowest of the lowest prices, which helps me just buy more of them and create this more valuable collection. And for me, it's fun, like being frugal and but still collecting what I really love and spending limited amount of money. It's sort of like a game, you know. It's like, you know, how little can I spend, you know, to get one of the most valuable collections in the world type of thing. And it's really fun. It's really enjoyable for me. So this card I picked out because, interestingly, as you can see, Charmander here, he has these, on his back here, he has those little bumps, which tells you whenever you see that on the Charmander, that means you've got really old art because that was changed for the American, the English, not American, but English versions. Show you a few others. So other things you're going to notice is the Japanese, particularly the early Japanese, loved picking on Psyduck, and Psyduck is in a lot of these cards is being attacked by other people, by other Pokemon. So I picked a few of those just to show you some of the cute art and the funny art that are on these, you know, really cool. Love it. And there are also other Pokemon sort of attacking each other and teasing each other, playing with each other. So I picked out a few of those just to show you them. Here's the last one I picked out. You know, so I guess I'll put this guy back as we sort of end here. So it's been really, you know, I really looked forward to making this video. I really particularly love these cards, and I wanted to share them with everyone. If you haven't seen these cards before, you know, please let me, you know, whether you've seen them or you haven't seen them, please let me know what you think about the art. You know, if you haven't seen these cards before, I'd be particularly curious sort of what your response is to them. You know, do you like them? What do you guys think generally about the pre-TCG? You know, I think a lot of people's hesitance to collect these is really understandable because they're sort of outside of, there's already so much to collect within the TCG, And so I think people feel like, you know, I only have so much money and I want to complete collections. And so you know, maybe I don't have enough money to go outside of the, you know, the trading card game. There's already so much that I like here and so much to collect here that I want to finish before I move to something like this. And I, you know, and I totally get that. And that's how I actually felt in the beginning when I started collecting. I started with Wizards of the Coast, you know, and then went into the EX Nintendo Gold Star era and tried to collect as many of those as I could for good prices. And so I totally get that. But I have to say, when I saw this art and I learned, because I never knew about these, you know, and I think probably very few people did growing up, who grew up on the English cards. As soon as I saw these, and as soon as I realized kind of the low pop numbers of a lot of these, and then started trying to grade them and saw how difficult they were to grade, and just the coolness of the art and the historic nature of these cards being out before any cards that I ever collected as a kid, I view these as so important to the history of Pokemon, and I was sold on sort of their collectibility, and of course with collectibility comes investability, and should follow growing prices over time as these cards age and are seen, I think, more for what they are, which is part of the history, you know, of that early Pokemon Japanese era. So I will end the video there for today. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for, you know, subscribing and liking our videos, you know, getting close to that 1,000 mark, where we are planning on doing, if there's enough interest and enough people want it, I was thinking instead of doing just like a regular Q&A, we would do some sort of like a live, you know, Q&A hangout type thing. And as I said in the previous video, you know, I saw PokeRev do that, and I think it works pretty well, and it was something that I, you know, had wanted to do even before I started the channel, was eventually do kind of like live discussions, because I don't go off notes, I don't go off scripts on this channel. I do think a little bit about, before doing the channel, about what I'd like to say, but honestly I kind of like just talking off the top of my head with people and giving you guys just my like honest feedback right in the moment. And so I think that would work really well in sort of a live format, and I want to just like hear more from you guys. You know, this sort of one way talking to the camera, and then, you know, responding to sort of your comments later is great, but I would rather kind of interact with you in real time if possible. So hopefully you guys would be interested in that as well, and we could pick a time that would work for enough people that it wouldn't be just me kind of sitting awkwardly doing nothing, or just rambling and talking to myself. So we'll figure that out as it goes along. So thanks again for watching, and I'll have another video for you all soon. All right, take care.